very good. Okay, so the next thing we wanted to do was we're going to take a little bit of time, and we're kind of stepping back from folks who help brands do this and come back to where we were at the beginning of the day, the people who are actually running these programs in brands for real. And so from your left to right, Sabrina Stoffregen, who runs the ambassador program at Intel and has been for quite a while. So she has been there and done that and has a lot of great lessons to share. DeShelia Spann at Eaton, who runs the program there, which is a different perspective on employee advocacy programs. And Tammie Wagner from AT&T, who's heavily involved in employee advocacy programs at AT&T as well. So I've got a few questions for them. We'll have a little bit of Q&A at the end, and hopefully, this will be helpful to all you guys. But so we'll start off. I think I'm going to sit down, and then so one of the things we wanted to talk about was the space is evolving and it's maturing, right? I mean, it's still kind of a small market, I think, in a lot of ways, and you guys have kind of experienced that because you sort of started when things were basic. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about is how are you guys thinking about taking your program to the next level? Like, what does that even mean? And so what are some of the goals? It'd be good, maybe we'll just kind of go from Sabrina in this way to say, what did you kind of do at first? And then what are you trying to do next, for the business or for the program or whatever it might be?
Okay, sure, I'm happy to start. So we've actually run the Intel Ambassador Program for about 3 years now. So we've been in this for a little while, and we've learned a lot. I've made a ton of mistakes, and I'm very proud of those mistakes, because that's how you take it to the next level, really, that's it. So, what I would say is taking it to the next level for me is about shifting it from an employee advocacy program to an employee advocacy movement. And a movement is about aligning people behind a shared purpose. And it's about initially starting with a pilot, but then giving the employees and empowering the employees the freedom to advocate. And that feels scary. It did to me. It probably does to you. But to really let go and let them lead. So one particular example I'll share with you is I hold a think tank of ambassadors. Because seriously, they have way better ideas than I do. So I don't have to come up with all the brilliant ideas. Let them come up with the brilliant ideas. And I had one of these ambassadors who was in a business group. So I sit in corporate marketing, and she sat in a business group. And she had this idea about allowing our employees who take the company jet, our Intel shuttle, back and forth to our different US sites to test drive some of our technology. Brilliant, put the technology in their hands and they will advocate, right? And it was an idea that I helped bolster and support and guide, but it wasn't something that I led. I empowered her to lead, and I empowered the business group to get the credit. So that's sort of my strategy on how we're taking it to the next level. And I would think, one thing to Susan's talk before, it's about measuring those results. How do you measure conversion rates? How do you measure real impact to the business and making the business case?
So do you, as you're thinking about how other people can start to own this and build it out in other areas besides just you owning and running the program, is it still kind of a marketing function, or do you see it crossing over to either care and support, hiring and recruiting, other things?
Interesting that you asked me that question. So when I started the program 3 years ago, I wasn't in marketing. I was in employee communications. I was on the HR side of the house. This started because this was a grassroots employee movement. That always has been its base. I happen to be in marketing now, which I think that could be good. I don't know. It takes on, I'm just looking at it through a different lens. But when we selected the ambassadors, and I think this might be sort of an important point, is that we made sure that they were not just marketing employees. I love marketing employees. I am now a marketing employee. But our ambassadors were people who were representative of every single business division that we had in the company, and they were all levels of employees. They were new hires, they were admins, they were program managers, they were engineers. They were not marketing specialists. So,
okay,
yeah.
Great. So, DeShelia, when you were thinking about kind of how you got started, where you've come from, what are the next things you guys are trying to do, and how are you thinking about how to make that happen?
Oh, we're slowly moving out of infancy. So our program it launched in January. So we're not even a year old, but we started with a pilot, and I think you've heard other people talk about today that having a pilot is a good way to begin your program. It was great for us to really be able to get a perspective of how our employees would engage. And to Sabrina's point, we did not have all marketing employees in our program. We did do a mix, but we looked at individuals who were social savvy already outside of Eaton or had asked questions about engaging more with social media to talk about what they do in their day-to-day role at Eaton. So we've come out of that stage, and we're into now what I call our kind of phase 2, where we've now brought in another group of people. And our goal is really to scale the program globally, but also to scale it where we can manage being able to support and assist the advocates in the process. Because one of the biggest things you can do when you start a program is you can throw a lot of people into the program, but then if you don't have the resources to help train them and educate them on how to use the program, the benefits of it, then you lose your advocates that are engaging on a day-to-day basis. So we're always trying to think about, looking at the stats, looking at the numbers, how many people are still engaged with us, has someone who is maybe more engaged than in other times, if that person has fallen kind of off of the scale and we don't see as much activity of them, let's touch base with them and see maybe why they're not as engaged. It may be something in the business that they're working in, or the department within Eaton has taken a lot of their attention and they can't be as active with us. But we want to scale things at a slow rate so that we could really manage the growth. And also we're looking at scaling globally. So that's a whole nother dynamic to how you share content. So when I look at kind of where we're going, like I say, we've come out of infancy. We're in the toddler stage a little bit, but we're slowly progressing forward, and we're also wanting to make sure that we're bringing in advocates that, right now I'm looking at a mix of the savvies versus those who may be a little skeptical a little bit, but may want to see how it works. And social selling is a big thing for us because we are a B2B company. So how do we connect that for our sales team with them being able to share social content on a day-to-day basis in their connections? That is something that's very important to where we want to go next.
So Tammie at AT&T, how would you sort of characterize where you guys have come from and what you're trying to do next, and how you're thinking about approaching that?
We have been, we started as a grassroots program, I guess around 2008, and came online with an online content hub in 2009. So we've been growing the program since then. And, I mentioned this when we were talking about some of the promotional materials that Denise helped us put out, is the honeymoon phase is over. I mean, you can go and get Ben and Lewis and those folks pretty easily. They're passionate. You want to go get the 80-20 rule, right? You can go and get those pretty easily. They're on board. When you start opening it up to this other pool of employees, you have to kind of draw back and do some research. Just like you were talking about, you've got social sellers, you've got people who say, there's no way I'm getting on social media, there's no way I'm going to mix business with personal, and you're going after those people now. The honeymoon phase when you can hug and kiss Lewis all the time. Thank God, love you, Lewis. But I mean, you're not going after those people, you're going after more of a general population, and by the way, this happens, when attention is drawn after you do your pilot and get the program started, you get, 2,000 people or so on board, it gets leadership's attention, right? So what happens is, somebody, this happens to you, all right? So you're going down your little merry path and you know what you need to do and you're trying to grow the program and you've got your plan and somebody comes up with a brilliant idea that you need to do something else. So you have to keep your train going, get your research so you can help steer those directions, those great ideas in the right direction, right? And so you do the research, make sure that you can reach out to the people that you need to reach out for, that you have the resources to support. It's a whole different ballgame when you get out of that honeymoon phase and start opening up the program to a larger audience and get beyond that pilot phase. And another thing that we're doing right now, in addition to the research, so that we can draw to the right audiences and do what we need to do to grow the program, is keep it in front of everybody. When you're opening it up to a larger audience and trying to convince some of these people that it's good good for them, not just good for the company to be part of this, and it's part of the culture now. And we told you can't talk outside of the company for 20 years, and now we're telling you to go tweet about your day in the life at the office. It changes the whole dynamic of everything. So you want to get it in front of everybody as much as you can. So we're developing an editorial calendar, kind of like what you were talking about, Michael. So we have right now, to keep the train moving while we're still developing the niche audiences like social selling, we're developing an editorial calendar so that we have, just as an example, we're going to blog for beginning and intermediate kind of social savvy folks with a biweekly blog. We're going to do a face-to-face session. So
it's a calendar of content targeting your employees.
Yeah, so that no matter where you are, if you're just a beginner that's getting to know this, and you want to reach out to those folks too, all the way up to the social savvy sellers and some of the folks that have their personal brand online already established, like Lewis and Mike and some of those folks. You want to cater to all those people as you're trying to get to your niche audiences. So opening it up beyond that first pilot phase and that honeymoon phase for us is growing this immensely and really spreading out your focus. And it's not for the faint of heart. Get a bottle of wine.
So 2008 you started?
I believe the program started just prior to 2009. We brought it on board.
Okay, 2014?
Yes.
And when did you guys start?
3 years ago.
Okay, so 2011?
Yeah.
Okay, so 2009, 2011, and 2014. That's a pretty wide spread. And I think a lot of people don't realize that brands have actually been doing employee advocacy for this long, and it's still very new, right? So you said a couple of things that I wanted to ask you about. So do you guys, to what extent do you get support from your internal sort of change management people? So if you're building an editorial calendar to communicate with employees, I mean, are you guys, is this all kind of on your own? Are you able to get resources from, change communications or change management or employee communications or whatever it might be called? Or are you still kind of pulling it together best
I've
you can?
recruited ambassadors across the company, so when I need internal comm support, I go talk to those ambassadors. I've got allies across the company.
So the ambassadors are the ones who are helping you make it happen.
For sure.
You're less relying on internal corporate resources.
I think you have to have a couple of, at least for us, you have to have a couple of really good senior leader sponsors, people that have your back, that will advocate for you. I think it probably is a little bit, I don't think that you will get everybody on senior leadership on board with employee advocacy initially, so you probably don't want to go after that particular goal, but make sure you have a couple of people that have got your back, and they really will give you momentum and bolster and help you be successful.
And for us, it's a little different in the sense that we started within the electrical sector, so our electrical business. And for me, it was building relationships with those stakeholders that were on the corporate side of communications to say, hey, here's an idea that we have. We'd like to implement it. Here's what it will look like, and keeping them abreast of what's going on. Because no one likes to be blindsided when an email comes out or an announcement and they have no clue that it was to be planned. So it was really bringing them in early on, keeping them engaged, talking about how the program is growing, giving them some of the benefits that we've seen from it, the value of it. And then it actually, what happens is they start to talk it up in other meetings. So it grows from there. So if they feel like, oh, this is something great that they're doing over in the electrical business, well, let's see how it's, see how it runs. And some of them were skeptics in the beginning, but now they're very much involved. And it grew to just starting in our group to saying, okay, this makes sense. Now we want to bring the industrial side of our organization onto it. So we've even started to see that growth, but it definitely is finding your stakeholders that will help advocate for you as you move around the business and wanting to do things. And then what I'm finding now is that I'm starting to get emails from people saying, hey, I have this great piece of content. I think we should put it on the advocacy portal. I think people should be sharing this.
Okay. So after you've been doing this for a little while, how do you keep people wanting to keep doing it? How do you keep people from just kind of falling out or getting tired of it, or the shine wears off? Or
So I think I'll speak to when Ambassador Bruni was up here earlier. Really, he's like fabulous, one of our best ambassadors ever. You have to know your ambassadors. You have to take the time to get to know the person. And the way I like to incentivize and motivate our ambassadors is really through intrinsic motivators versus extrinsic. So every once in a while, I will, a $25 gift certificate or something, extrinsic. That's nice, but I think it drives the wrong behavior. And so what I look at is what would incentivize a person, not a collection of people, but a person. So I try to give access to people, events, and technology. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So if I'm trying to motivate one of our factory employees, which by the way is 50,000 people at Intel, so this is not a small population, it's a big population, I think about what opportunities they might not get in their daily job. So for instance, a factory employee may not get the opportunity to represent Intel at the Consumer Electronics Show. And for those of you who have been, it's impressive. It's really fun. And it's such a rewarding opportunity for the employee just to go, and two, to speak on behalf of Intel, a company that they love. So I would use that particular incentive. If I was trying to incentivize a product engineer, they've probably been to CES a time or two, and if you've gone like for 7 years in a row, you're sort of like over it. At least I was. I would say, hey, I could set up a business meeting with your senior vice president, and you could have a sit-down lunch and talk about all of your great ideas. That would be highly rewarding. So it's about knowing your ambassadors and finding the right incentive for each individual. That's been my experience.
Cool. You guys, Tammie, do you have any thoughts?
Well, two things on that. One of the things that I think we do that I love is our administrative team, the folks that run the program, are in emerging communications. So on top of the technology and the platform, we have content experts that are tied into the social media team, and we have employee communications and corporate communications on the admin team, and we have an analysis person. We have business unit representatives. So this makes up our admin team. So you have the content team that can help, when you because when you grow your program, people are going to start going, well, I'm going to get my sellers on board, but you need to put some of my content on there. You have to have this in place, right? And then when you want to get everybody on board and you want to engage people, the employee communications and corporate communication people, are great to do that. So we have this admin team that I think, the structure that I love, because it engages, and the more people you talk to, and the social media people are reaching out, and you have more people to help you talk to all these people, because they all want you to come to their meetings and tell about it, which is great. You never want to turn those down. And the second thing, and in addition to the admin structure that we have that's kind of far-reaching into the tentacles of the organization, we are. I had it in my head. I'm losing my mind here.
Makes two of us. Don't
I
worry about
know, honestly. We do programs for incenting employees to get involved, not just, hey, you can win, a outdoor hammock with an incentive. Like you said, it draws the wrong, you don't want people spamming people. You don't want to go out and just talk about the company. But for some of these people that you're trying to bring up from the beginning and intermediate stages, we wrap our incentive programs around activities. Like we have, you can look on Twitter now, hashtag life at AT&T, and we have missions every month. So you go out and you share a picture of what you're doing at your company that you love. Fill in the blank. We give them activities to do. We do something that's become a tradition called 10 Days of Giving at the end of the year, where you have 10 days of activities. You grow your Twitter following by 3 people, or you thank 3 people that day, and you're entered into drawing. So we teach people and get them engaged so they talk about it more. So those are kind of things that we do to really, when you start growing the program, you've got to get out there and be in the conversation and part of the culture. And if you don't do that, that's where you get into trouble.
So one of the things you said was that after you move past the obvious participants, you have to do some research to really figure out how to make it work with the next segments of your employees. So what, or one or two, when you say research, what are one or two examples of what that would be?
We are a very diverse organization. We have, our audience that can participate in this is over 80,000 employees. And so in that, we have people that are in the automotive or focused on the automotive industry, the the entertainment industry, sports, sponsorship, marketing, business units, getting into healthcare. And we have a very diverse organization, very blessed to be part of that. And it's great stories to tell. But how do you go out there and tap into those social sellers, the employee resource groups that focus on particular demographics, Asian Pacific Islanders, veterans? How do you go out there, reach out to HR? How are you using social media, and how do you tap into that? And, you know, like Liz was saying, how do you make it part of the culture and map to each of those parts of the culture?
So the research is probably a lot of conversations with those people, right?
Oh, heavens, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We talk all the time.
I think
Oh, no, please.
I think it's a lot of conversations, and what I find is right now, because we are transitioning over to a more active group of advocates, it's finding out perhaps why some employees have not had as big of interest in participating, or why they feel like social may not be their space. And so that does mean sometimes you have those one-off conversations, or sometimes I will do webinars or attend group meetings and just get some insight from them. Because a lot of it is people feel like, well, I don't want to merge my personal with my business. And then when you give them a little bit of insight into, you don't have to share on every channel. You can choose how you want to engage. That is helpful. So we're doing a bit of that, but also I'm picking my top advocates who have done very well to go out, and they're telling me, like, this group, we've talked to them about it, they're a little leery about it. Let's send them out and have them talk about, hey, this is what I'm getting out of it for my business and what I do. And right now for us, a big group that's been very successful is our product marketing group. They've really caught on to it, and they see the value of being able to talk about their products and their services and what goes on, but talking about it not so much in I'm selling Eaton to you, but hey, I'm at this place, this is what I'm showing, this is how it benefits you as a business, versus just always Eaton is great, which we are, but but being able to have more of a conversation, as we said earlier, some people said humanizing the conversations that you have online.
Okay. Did you have any?
Oh, I was thinking about, you know, really understanding your employee audience and doing research. You know, I was trying to solve a problem, so I couldn't figure out why our factory employees were really not engaging in being advocates. And I thought, well, gosh, I collected all this great content. I put it on a beautiful website. I've told them to come. I reminded them to come. They're not coming. I don't get it. And so we took more of an anthropological approach to understanding that particular target audience. And I really just went into the factory environment and watched how they communicated, watched how they wanted to consume information and how they wanted to share information. And what I found out, and it's so obvious now, I cannot believe I didn't figure this out right away, but they don't sit at a computer like you and I do every day. What they do, they're in the factory, right? So it's not like they're using devices and stuff in the factory, but on their breaks they come out and they're using their own personal mobile devices. And I thought, oh, so if I made the content available on their mobile device, it's not an Intel device, well, it could be an Intel device, but you know, their own personal device, and I made it really easy, like in 3 steps, they could share the content, that would really empower our employees. Bingo, that was it. So, you know, I talked about all the mistakes I've made. That was one of them. But yeah, you really have to know your employees.
You know, Kristen,
I'm still in that one since we have factory workers.
Yeah. And if you need something a little more concrete besides just having conversations in general, you can make a stakeholder grid and say, you know, if the employee resource group or the HR group is a group I want to reach out to that makes sense for you, then you start going, these are their events for the year. This is when they have their staff meeting. This is when the diversity council meets. Be there and have the conversation and get your program in there and the value of your program. Teach them about personal branding. Start developing some, you know, quick and easy snackable kind of training that you can deliver that'll make it valuable to them, and be there. Just be there.
That's why it's always good to have that stakeholder group in your pilot. Because then you're building your advocates early on, so as you try to grow and get the word out, you've already got someone who's kind of seated in that group who can talk about the benefits for you. And it's better to hear from a colleague or a peer than it is, because we have to talk about how great it is. But you know, there's someone else that can give that message. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So I'm going to ask one more kind of open question, and then we'll see if the audience has questions for you guys. What's the biggest thing that you have not yet figured out that you're trying to figure out as you want to advance your program? Is that fair? Can I ask that?
Thanks, Chris.
Just make something up. Nobody's going to know.
I mean, you know this. It's just organic to what you need to do. For everything you need to do, you get leadership buy-in, right? They don't have time. They don't have time to devote to it because it's this big hairy beast that they're going to have to develop this online brand. And, you know, a lot of them, you surprise them. There was an article not too long ago that, you know, only a small percentage of CEOs in America are online. They don't have an online brand. They've got to build that, develop a strategy for it. You've got to train all the people, the chiefs of staff, their communications, their PR people, their IT team that supports them and how to set up their, you've got to do a lot to get them online. And cracking that nut, and how many of you are a one man, one woman kind of deal here? All this stuff we're talking about, we're all trying to do this probably with 3 other duties on your plate, if not more, and trying to crack the nut of how to get executives on board, get them passionate about it, and until they are on board and know how to do it, they're not going to be an evangelist for you. Getting there is tough. That's where you need that extra bottle of wine. But just saying.
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. I agree scale is important. So if you think about, you know, the traditional adoption curve, you need 16% of your population to get that tipping point. And, you know, when you're talking about 100,000 people at Intel, that's 16,000 people I've got to get on board. So that's a big hurdle.
I hear you.
So global is for me. Going
Yeah.
global. So that's the biggest thing I'm focusing on right now. I've got to get it done, and I need to get it done quick. So.
Yeah. It's interesting that you guys haven't said anything about technology being a challenge. You don't have to say anything about that.
I think it's because we already cracked that one. But if you would have asked me a year ago,
Yeah.
I would have said that having that employee advocacy platform, I think Michael was talking about, you know, the 2 different kinds, the community and I forgot the other one, sorry, Michael. But anyway, really that helped us get past that initial hurdle of scaling. I know some of my colleagues at Deloitte and other companies that I've worked with, you guys have hit that roadblock too. So once you get the employee platform, that really gets you to get the content to be able to scale, and it also goes to Susan's point about measurement. It helps you with the measurement piece.
5 years ago, it probably was an issue.
Yeah.
But now it's people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do we have any questions out there?
Hi, Teresa from Lenovo. DeShelia, you mentioned going global as being your priority. Does that include language support?
Yes, it does.
Okay, which is a hurdle on its own.
Yes. So the challenge with opening up a program like this is it's great and everyone wants to join, and that means our colleagues globally want to join too. So you have to think about how do you provide that information. I mean, it's the same thing we do when we talk about building our websites, sending out our emails and how we message. It's the same thing for employee advocacy. How do I put the content out there globally in all languages that make sense? So you can't do all languages that are there. So we're looking at now, where do we start based on where our markets are and our customer base and our employees that makes sense. Yeah.
Going back a little to your technology point in terms of getting the employee advocacy platform in place in order to start to scale, before you started to scale, where did you get the buy-in to invest in that platform? Was that where your sort of senior stakeholders came into play, or?
For us, I would say I had a very strong advocate on 2 sides of the house, marketing, and I had the CMO absolutely behind us and a huge advocate, and I also had HR, because it really was, we were looking, if you go back to business problem, and I love, Susan, that you really pushed on the business problem. What business problem are you trying to solve? And for us, it was about relevancy. So we wanted Intel's brand to be more relevant, and we wanted to bolster our reputation, and we also wanted to improve our employee morale and engagement, which in turn drives performance. So when I had 2 advocates at that senior staff level saying, hey, this is the right thing to do, that's what got the money.
Hey, it's me again. You mentioned when you've got senior leadership who is, too busy being senior leaders to get engaged in, in social. What about the flip side, where you've got leaders who are really engaged in social, but don't really have the time to learn how to do it the right way? And I think we've seen a number of public instances where that's happened. And I don't know, I don't know what you all are doing to try to head that off.
Tasers.
Oh my gosh. The taser always works.
I'll be looking for a job next year.
I told you they were troublemakers.
They'll edit that out for you too.
Yeah, thank you. Please do.
That is a challenge. You try to kind of have that conversation and say, hey, here's what we have in place for a new program. We'd like to show you and share with you how we're doing it, and here's some best practices. I'd be happy to even help maybe create some crafted tweets for you and posts that will help you. So you have to kind of lightly touch that, but you also want to give them something to navigate them to another place than where they are right now. We don't have that many senior management on social media, so it's been great for us because we actually can help them build their brand as they're going, and that's what we started, kind of an executive initiative to do that. But so I'm thankful in the sense I don't have to deal with a lot of scary tweets that come out that I get alerted to in the middle of the night. So.
And I would say for Intel, we're on that end of the spectrum too. Really, for years, we've told our people not to talk about us. I don't know why we do that. You know, it's an overabundance of caution. And it's, you know, we trust our employees, yet we're nervous about possible excursions, right? I'm sure you can appreciate that from a legal perspective. So we don't have a lot of executives that are rogue. We don't even have a lot of executives that are tweeting now, even on good behavior. So we've got to really work to swing that. Mm-hmm.
And there are lots of legal issues, and I know I talked to you out in the hallway a little bit. Fair Labor Standards Act, who can do this online, and a leader doesn't want to do it if their employees can't do it. So there are a whole bunch of issues that you get into. It gets really thorny once you start trying to grow the program bigger. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Danielle Burke from LinkedIn. First of all, thank you so much for this panel. It's been really diverse to hear your different perspectives and all that kind of stuff, so it's been fascinating. I was really surprised that your answer to Chris's question was not demonstrating value, because that's actually what I struggle with the most. So I'd love to hear from each of you, what are the key KPIs that you're reporting to your leadership to kind of justify this investment? Because I imagine it's different, so I'd love to hear. Thank you.
I think for us, it depends on what particular employee advocacy engagement we're talking about. So for instance, we launched Intel tablets about a year and a half ago. And we said, okay, instead of doing our traditional marketing, and we still do some of that, but we really had it be, what did Michael call it? Brand journalists. We enabled and empowered our employees to be brand journalists. And so our measurement really goes back to our business objective on, were we able to get the impressions, the reach? I mean, the traditional marketing measurements that we look at, but we were able to track back to the employees versus just a broad tracking. So, for that particular thing, that's what we were measuring. There are lots of other engagements that we do, though, that don't have anything to do with launches. So, we had an employee expo that went around the world, and we were trying to reintroduce the general public to Intel. And instead of hiring local demo experts, we brought in Intel ambassadors, and we measured the customer experience between a demo expert and the Intel ambassador, and to see the difference between those. So those are just two examples, but I think it depends.
Yeah, I think ours is very open. We look at it, we always are, we try not to talk as much about product launches in a heavy way from the employee perspective. We want to talk more about customer successes and what the customer has done and how the employee have expressed that. And we find that they want to share that content because of it. So we're looking at it twofold. We look at what content resonates most with our employees, and they're pushing our message and our values forward as a company. We definitely are pushing a lot of the activity we're doing with sustainability, so we look at that, measuring how that is reaching out in the market. But then if we do have special events, live programs that are going on, and we're live tweeting that and we're pushing that out or sharing it on LinkedIn and other places, then we want to measure the impressions of how far that gets, how far beyond our employee does the content go, how much more engagement is pushed out from there. So sometimes it's not always a hard, fast number, but it's how many people are actually engaged with our content and can have maybe clicked on something or heard something we've said. And for us, that helps us also go back and say, what type of content are we putting on the platform? Do we need to realign? And what we found out in a lot of cases was mixing our content with third-party content that may be applicable to our industry or our business practices also helped people be more engaged with it when our employees shared.
And you know, as we grow the program, we are expanding the way we look at our impressions and engagements at the same time. You know, you want to get people engaged, you want to get them talking, because the exponential power of the employee voices is really what we want to harness out of this. And our brand ambassadorship is our job. We distinguish ourselves very clearly from the customer service group, from the group that gets paid, you know, to do this for a living, and the handles that they manage. This is purely brand ambassadorship, and that's where we settle ourselves. But, you know, we want to reach out and see what impression we're making. We also tie it to the internal perspective of our employees and their job satisfaction and how they feel about the company, our net promoter score, our internal net promoter score. And, you know, another thing that we monitor, you know, this is one of those things, once you get attention to it, you better grow it, right? So we even though that's not, you know, the main goal of it, you don't want just every Tom, Dick, and Harry in a seat doing this, right? But, you know, leadership wants to grow it because they're investing in it. So, you know, we watch growth, we watch impressions and sentiment, net sentiment, and we also, you know, we're starting to correlate as we grow this bigger and bigger, you know, just like what you said, what percent of the market is talking about this from an employee perspective versus the paid. So.
Awesome. So we are out of time on this one, but thank you all so much.